3 ingredients. It's only 3 ingredients. How hard could this be? How could I possibly mess this up? It took flour, butter, and sugar. What could go wrong? Well, you know me a lot. But anyway, that's what I thought when I attempted to make some Scottish shortbreads this past winter. I wanted to make these for the guy I've been seeing who's from Glasgow, Scotland. And I know, what it's like to be hungry for that kind of taste of home stuff. I've often been hungry for some Pennsylvania Dutch shoe fly pie, and now it's now left the name. The name of it left my head.
Scrapple.
That's it. Thank you. Scrapple. I've been hungry for Scrapple. So anyway, I thought I would make some shortbread for Frank. Anyway, so I know what it's like to be hungry for something, even if it's not food, but something that can give us comfort. I get that hunger. I get the hunger, that physical and emotional hunger that those recently freed slaves were experiencing in the wilderness in our first reading. Although the situation they had left was not good, they probably weren't having giant feasts as being slaves, but they'd been out wandering and they were hungry. They were hungry. We all know what that's like. So I thought, flour, butter, sugar, what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? It's so simple, We love simple. Simple things are good. In our often chaotic, confusing, consternating world right now, I totally get that hunger for comfort, consistency, clarity. And what is more simple than love? Love, really. At the heart of our faith, Christianity, and so many other religions, but is love, right? Over and over and over again in scriptures and in sermons, we hear that love is at the core. And it's really, when you break it down, 3 simple ingredients. Love God, love yourself, love others. 3 simple ingredients. What could go wrong? You would think that a progressive congregation like ours, and like our denomination, we don't have a lot of rules. No, we don't. We don't have a lot of rules. We don't say women need to have long hair, obviously. We don't say we need to wear long skirts. We don't say we have to dress modestly. We don't tell you what you can and can't eat, can and can't drink, what music you can listen to or not. We probably should have told Scott to not dance. But that's not what we do. It's not too difficult. Love one another, right? What could possibly go wrong? So Village, as a congregation, we used to have a book club. And, as COVID did, that killed a lot of stuff. But anyway, so we decided a while ago to restart our book club. And we are, as usual, attentive to the current events. So we decided to read books that some folks want to ban. So we have our unbanned book club. We are not afraid to be challenged. We are not afraid of criticism. We want to stand, or at least sit around a table in solidarity with those voices that people are trying to marginalize. So our book club met a few weeks ago after worship on a Sunday morning, right over there in the community room. That space where, among other things, after worship, we often gather with food, because that's what you do, to socialize. It is a place where we aren't just feeding calories, but we are feeding the hunger of not just our bodies with nicely prepared snacks. This is great. But we're also, at that time, feeding the care, the need for one another. We are caring for one another. Fellowship is an extension. It's not just, hey, we're having some food. It's an extension of what we have just been doing in worship. What we are talking about, praying about, singing about, preaching about. Caring for one another. Loving one another. Connecting. Listening. So a few weeks ago, all this is happening. Those two really good things. It's all happening right here. It's amazing. Village, it's great. It takes a village. What could possibly go wrong? Some of you were here. Well, the participants of the book club were in one corner and trying to discuss the book they were had read, and they couldn't quite hear one another because in other places in that same space, folks were engaged in really good conversations. Some of them, like Julie, was having a really good conversation with Kelly. It was great. There was a lot of good stuff going on. And Tom Schaefer, raise your hand, thank you. Okay, they know this is happening, by the way, just so you know. Tom Schaefer was leading the book club, and after evidently a few requests to quiet down that got unheard, Tom stood up and yelled at basically everybody to please be quiet. I'm not sure please, but please used, I wasn't here. He yelled. Maybe. Perhaps. So he stood up and proceeded to reprimand and yell at the whole room of fellowshippers and tell them to pipe down and be quiet. I'm probably putting some words in his mouth. And if they couldn't, to move out of the space. Not so good. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Well, so the first time that I mixed those three ingredients, the butter, the sugar, and the flour together, I poured it in the pan, I baked it at the right temperature, I pulled it out of the oven in time, I set it out to cool. You know, it smelled so good. It looked so good. And I just have to say, in the recipe of what makes up my constitution of being Donna, patience is not included in that. So I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's done. And so I take, and it wasn't too hot, I take the thing and I flip it onto the dry rack. What do you think happened? Crumbs! Yeah, it hadn't, whatever, set, yes, I'm not a domestic person. And so, yeah, what should have been nice, being able to cut up as short breads, became short crumbs all over everywhere. And it did not go well. It broke apart. It all fell apart.
Did Charlie like the crumbs that fell on the floor?
He did, if I shared them. The thing is, I can also eat crumbs. You don't want to give crumbs to someone as a present, but I certainly can clean up well. So anyway, so it wasn't a complete disaster, but it did not end up going to the person intended. So it all fell apart. Getting back to a few weeks ago. I don't know if this happened, but I know what we're like, people. And if we had a parking lot after that Sunday, I imagine there might have been some parking lot conversations. I'm not sure if this happened, but there could have been some Sunday night phone calls about what happened after worship, or some Monday morning calls made. That could happen because, you know, feelings were hurt. People were hurt. we hunger for feeling good. And when we don't feel good, whether for whatever reason, there's a lot of like, talk to one another, dig in your heels, feel good about yourself, especially when you've been hurt or not heard. Well, a few days pass from Sunday, and it gets to be Wednesday evening, and in that same space, people are sitting around those very same tables, and it's our church council meeting. So we have Kurt and Bill and Barb and Mark and Jan and myself and Tom and Julie are at the council meeting. So, I, as the pastor, know what's going on. I'd been told what was going on, even though I hadn't been there. So anyway, we get through discussing the business of our congregation, and at the agenda, there's usually the new business section. And I tell you, as a pastor, I'm wondering, is this going to come up? Is it going to come up? Because you know what? Do we always like to talk about these things? No, a lot of times, I was kind of wondering that. A lot of times we like to keep this stuff quiet, because it's not nice to call out people, is it? Sometimes, so if we just keep it hush-hush and then we just talk amongst ourselves, that's so much nicer, right? When we just do that, and then you get the Sunday morning fellowship camp, and then you get the book club, and you get all that stuff going on. Well, at council, I didn't have to wonder too long, because Julie, bless her heart, and I mean in a good way, speaks up. And she begins to recount the events of just 3 days prior. And Tom is there at the table. And I will be honest here, Tom's first reaction was honestly to dig in. I even think he said, I'm not going to apologize or something.
I said, I didn't really feel bad about it.
You don't, yeah.
And I kind of explained this briefly. I'm not a quick apologizer because when we have quick apologize, it's saying, I'm sorry I got caught. And I wanted to think about it. And so that was part of why I responded.
Yeah. Well, and the book club has every right to be in the space and to use it and to be heard. It's a shared space. I know as a pastor at some point, I think I said, but yelling at one another is just, not appropriate. I didn't yell at, So words continue to be spoken about amongst us. I don't need to go into all the details, just to say that both Julie and Tom, I feel, heard one another. They heard one another, and at the end of the meeting, I looked over and saw them hugging. Not just words of forgiveness, but acts of reconciliation. Apology, forgiveness, reconciliation. It would have been so easy, as I said, to not bring this up. Our society, our culture, with its almost insatiable appetite for divisiveness, you can imagine, like I said, the fellowship Julie camp, the book club versus the book club, the us versus them. It's like our culture has this insatiable hunger for that. But I think we offer something else. We offer something else other than, I'm right, you're wrong, winner takes all attitude. And even the attempt to just be nice, we can do more than that. We can be better than that. We can address. Because when you just keep things down, resentments just kind of get baked into ourselves and our relationships. But what we're about, God, Spirit, following Jesus calls us into a deeper faith, a more mature faith, using the wording of our second reading. But that's not often a simple, easy faith. It is a faith that takes the listening and loving one another seriously, and that's hard work. It's not simple. asking for forgiveness when necessary, the mature ability to admit wrong, the mature ability to be reconciled. That is something our world, I think, is starving for. I think we are often starving for that. And it is a gift that we can give. It is the food that feeds us. It is the basis of what we do here as we have communion and sharing the peace with one another. That is the food, the bread of life, our community, our hope in God and hope in one another, our belief in the living and active love of God. That night at council, we witnessed, we participated in all the ingredients. They came together. Loving God, loving ourselves, and loving one another. With that bread of healing, that bread of life, that bread of love, we are truly fed. Amen.